Surprise yourself with the all-new 252 Suzuki range at Hugo Luna Motors. Suzuki's Japanese quality is ready to stand out and make you feel proud every time you drive. Whether it's the zippy Swift or the adventure-ready S-Cross, enjoy 0% finance, handy tech, safety features and great value as standard. All wrapped in the fun and efficiency of a hybrid. The only tough part? Choosing which car to drive. Visit HugoLunaMotors.ie today, where we're not just different, we're good different. Finance subject to status, terms and conditions apply.
Country Life on Midlands 103. Brought to you by W. Orshaw, Burlington Business Park, Tullamore. Supplier of New Holland tractors in the Midlands. worshaw.ie.
Now, good evening and welcome to Country Life here in Midlands 103. It's MJ Clery with you until 8 p.m, bringing you the latest from the Midlands and further afield from the worlds of agriculture, food and agri-business. Thank you all for joining me this evening, as always. A great week of weather since I was speaking to you last Wednesday evening, and another few days to come. Again, high pressure still on the horizon. So look, 15th of October now, and what a month we are having across the Midlands, with stock out all over counties Laois, Offaly and Westmeath. Long may it continue, that's what we'll say at this stage of the year. Now, this evening's programme, in a moment, David Argue, cattle specialist from Teagasc, will chat about how finishers next year will need a minimum of €8 a kilo to break even with current cattle prices. More on that in a moment. Tirlawn announced their grain prices for 2025 last week, and unfortunately it's a fall in prices across the board, exactly when tillage farmers needed some extra money in the coffers. Laois woman Siobhan Walsh from the Irish Farmers Journal will join me to discuss these prices and also feedback from the tillage industry on last week's budget, with an additional €30 million being sent across to the tillage industry. Potato farmers are getting a fantastic spell of weather for harvesting, the best in memory. It wasn't a number of years ago, I think in 2022, if my memory serves me correctly, that it was one of the worst potato harvests in recent memory, with waterlogged fields up and down the country. So thankfully getting the rub of the green at the moment, and they would like more money for their produce, same as farmers across the board. However, the spell of weather that they are having for harvesting is helping them, and IFA Potato Chair Sean Ryan will join me later to give an update on the sector. Generational renewal is something we've been talking about in the programme a lot here over the course of the last period of time, and it was something I spoke about with Sean earlier on, how the potato industry in particular, just given the barriers to entry and the cost of the equipment and the machinery, that generational renewal is a massive, massive issue in this sector, something we're going to be speaking about a little later. Now, lastly, if you have an interest in the weather, like most farmers do, then Met Éireann are looking for your help, as they are compiling data on the weather in Ireland over the last 160 years, from about 1870 on, and they are looking for volunteers. Dr. Rona McGovern from Met Éireann will join me later with the details, as well as info on when in the past we had extreme weather conditions. So an interesting chat with Dr. Rona McGovern a little bit later here on the programme. Now, as always, text me or WhatsApp me 083 30 10 103. And as I said at the outset, it is beef and beef finishing. It's what we're starting with this evening. David Argue from Teagasc. David, many thanks for taking my call this evening.
Sean, how are you? Thanks very much for having me on this evening.
More than welcome, David. I suppose the overview of this, we're going to get into the nitty-gritty on different figures in a moment, but this was an article on yesterday's Farming Indo, and the headline was in excess of €8 a kilo will be needed to make a profit on current prices at the moment. It's a big figure, David.
Absolutely, MJ, it is indeed. But look, I suppose we're getting these figures based on we say the current price of weanlings in the markets at the moment, or store cattle at the moment. And you know, when you go through the variable costs and the fixed costs on farms associated with these different systems, we're looking at in excess of €8, we'll say, to break even in some of these systems, and well over €8, €8.40, €8.50 a kilo needed in some cases to make a margin of €250 per head in these systems, you know.
Yeah, and these systems then is what we're going to look at now. So you studied how many, David, exactly, and what? You don't have to give all the details, but in a word, how many and what were they?
Yeah, so look, we tried to we looked at about 14 different systems there this year, MJ. So we did from, we'll say, covering, we say, 3 different young bull systems under 16 months, weaning on to beef, autumn to autumn systems, which is very common all over the country. We say buying cattle now and bringing them right through to next autumn. And then we looked kind of more at that short-term keep animal. We say buying a forward store bullock or heifer now, keeping it for 70, 80 or 100 odd days and killing them again. And then we looked at a new system this year, Sean, that we probably would, or MJ, that we probably wouldn't have looked at in previous years, which is the dairy calf to beef runner system. So there's about 14 different systems there, all in all, included in this year's budget. So there is.
Yeah, and if we take a couple of those, I suppose, look, one of the main ones when it comes to the finishing system is the forward store system, the short keep, the 70 to 100 days. And then if you're looking at that autumn to autumn, that kind of year and a half kept through to the following year is another, as you say, quite popular one. If we're looking at systems such as those, David, are there great variances between them, or are they similar enough? Which ones are, I suppose, going to need the really big beef price to cover them, and which ones then are maybe a little bit more insulated to the high prices at the moment?
Yeah, so look, I suppose, well, first of all, MJ, we'll start with the buy-in price of these animals. We'll say this autumn time, or we'll say late August, early September. And I suppose the biggest jump that we've seen in any category of these animals is with the young bull weanling. We say that better quality young bull weanling. Last year he was fit to be bought about €3.43 a kilo, whereas this year we say the top third based on the Farmers Journal's figures the last couple of weeks in August and the first couple of weeks in September was €6.35. So that's €2.92 per kilo of an increase from this time last year, which, when you're 350 or 360 kilo bull weaning, you're looking at between 1,000 and 1,050 or 1,060 euros more in comparison to last year. Some of the heavier cattle will say, yes, they've all taken an increase in price, but we say some of the heavier cattle, the increase hasn't been as big, we'll say. If we're looking at that autumn to autumn steer system, we take, for example, a continental steer, last year he was fit to be bought maybe at €2.75 a kilo, whereas this year, they were at €4.80 a kilo. And again, then looking at the Hereford of Angus cross, last year they were about €2.45 a kilo, and they're up to about €4.20 this year, which is an increase of about €1.76 a kilo. So there is increases across all different categories of animals, but the greatest increase we've seen is definitely within that better quality young bull weaning. And I suppose that has been driven by the level of exports of these good quality young weanlings out of the country. They've kept a really good flow of them, so they have.
Big increases. David, do you feel that finishers at the moment are looking into next year, as I suppose as much as you are? I know you're a Teagasc beef specialist. Look, you're looking at it with a fine-tooth comb, but a lot of finishers are in a system where cattle are gone, like they have to purchase cattle again in order to keep tax bills down and whatnot, and that maybe there's a little bit of hope. Hope is never a strategy, but a little bit of hope that prices will be this next year. But there's not much they can do. Some of them, if that's their system, they have to keep it fed.
Absolutely, MJ. Look, we all learned a lesson last year. This time last year, cattle were sold, at whatever price they were, and farmers maybe made the decision where they wouldn't go and replace them for the winter time. They would wait till the springtime and go and replace the animals that they'd sold the previous autumn. And in a lot of cases, when them farmers went out to buy these store cattle in the springtime, they ended up giving what they got for their finished cattle the previous autumn. So look, there's a lesson there, I suppose, from last year. And again, as you said yourself, look, at anyone that's in a system, if you stick within that system, generally you'll probably stay between the lines, whereas if you fall out of it, you could leave yourself in a very vulnerable place when it comes to restocking the farm again.
Well, when we're looking at these cattle and the cost of cattle at the moment, Dave, a couple of things just have to be on point, and I suppose health is really a big one, especially if you're buying in younger cattle or buying in weanlings. Like, an outbreak of pneumonia or whatnot could be devastating financially to you now. So what's the advice on that side of things?
Yeah, look, absolutely. And as I said earlier on, these animals are up in €1,000 and across €1,000 more expensive than last year. So look, the first thing that I'd encourage all farmers to do when buying in these weanlings is have a good herd health plan in place. Get your weanlings in, get them settled. Once they're in a couple of days and they are well settled, maybe have a dose in mind or get them dosed for any internal or external parasites, and get a vaccination, program in place. I can't emphasize enough how important it is to get these animals vaccinated against the likes of your pneumonia or your respiratory diseases. Because as I said, there's a lot of money at stake here. The majority of these good weanlings are €2,000 plus, and any loss with these is massive at the moment. So it is.
Yeah, and then that leads into the nutrition of these animals, Dave. And I suppose, again, given this cost, we're not going to hit and hope. We're not going to give them some silage there and maybe a couple of kilos of a basic ration and kind of hope it does the trick. Like, we have to be doing everything correct, minerals, silage analysis, you name it, to make sure they are on point.
Surely we are, absolutely. Like this year, above all years, it's a perfect year, I suppose, to go and start off with the basics, get your silage tested, and find out where you are in terms of your quality of your silage, and use that as a starting point, we'll say, for the winter period. Once you've got your results back, you can make the decision then, how many kilos of meal needs to go into the diet in order to achieve that 0.6 or 0.65 of a kilo a day over the winter months. And then when they're turned out next spring, try and make as much use of good quality grass as possible, and go into the right covers and keeping animals changed every 21 days and whatnot. But look, it is very, very important in order for us to achieve these daily light weight gains now inside in the house in the first winter, and again outside next year, we'd say, if it's a second summer grass. If we're behind or if we're on the back foot, we'd say, going out of the house in the springtime, we're going to be on the back foot next autumn or next spring 12 months whenever these animals are to be killed. And look, at every kilo that we're losing is costing us money again the other end. So it is, with the cost of these weanlings being the price they are at the minute.
Yeah, lastly, David, as I said, cattle specialist there with Teagasc, look, your finger's on the pulse with it. I'm going to ask you to predict the future for me now. I know we're in October 25, but I don't think I've ever heard as much chat about calf prices at the back end of the year as I've heard this year. And I suppose, look, we won't feel the end of January, start of February 26th come around the corner and those Frisian bull calves will be up and running again. Where do you feel beef prices, calf prices especially, will be at the start of the year? Surely they're going to take a big increase as a result of the lesser numbers in the country of larger stock.
Look, it is a very hard one to call, MJ, at the moment. I've been speaking to a couple of farmers recently, and I'm hearing prices of maybe €400 to €500 for the likes of your Hereford or Angus calves. You're probably back a little bit, obviously, on your Frisian bull calf for that. But I suppose the springtime, or the calf price in the springtime, is going to be determined by two things from what I can see. The first one is going to be your live export trade, the number of calves that's been exported out of the country, and the demand from a live export trade. And the second thing is, I suppose, is the beef price. If beef price stays, fairly positive and continues to rise, calves is obviously going to increase with them, so they are. But one thing I'd say is, there's been plenty of years, we'll say, where calves have been not as dear as they are now at the minute. And I think it's important to emphasise, we want to try and continue to, farmers that are buying these calves, to work with the dairy farmers and try and build a relationship with them, to make sure that they're there, we say, in a year for beef price isn't as good as it is at the moment. So I think a fair selling price and a fair buying price for both is important as well. So it is.
Yeah, well said. David, many thanks. Really interesting piece of research there, and thanks for joining us on the programme.
Not at all. Thanks very much, MJ. Thank you.
David Argy there from Teagasc, and we need to ensure, I suppose, well, it's outside our control, but beef prices need to be ensured to be north of €8 a kilo, according to that research, in 2026 for finishers to have a margin. And that's not even a huge margin now. €8.40 a kilo will be needed for a €250 weanling profit if you're buying those weanlings at those current prices, which are, as we said, €1,000 more on average than this time last year. Just an interesting one I came across. Kerrygold reduces the butter block size in the UK. So just as a result of rising butter prices over the course of 2025, Kerrygold blocks in the UK have been reduced from 250 grams to 200 grams. So it's quite a small little amount of butter now, 200 grams. And the reason they are doing this is to ensure that the product is still accessible to shoppers. So make the product a little bit smaller, and then the price point stays roughly the same. And I suppose you're hoping that people won't notice and they will stay picking them up, really. That's the reality of it. It also confirmed it is not planning any changes on the size of the block in Ireland. they must realise that the Irish consumers would be given out if the butter blocks were smaller. But it's an interesting one, and it is, look, it's part of the global increase in the cost of food on supermarket shelves, and it's what's occurring in order to keep these products moving. Now, coming up after the break, we're going to talk to Siobhan Walsh, Laois lady from the Irish Farmers Journal, and we're going to talk about grain prices. Tirlan announced their grain prices for 2025, and also the budget gave a little bit more money to tillage farmers last week. Let's see what the sector is saying. Stay tuned for that.
Country Life on Midlands 103.
With W.R. Shaw, family owned and serving the Midlands since 1982, we're Ireland's largest independent agri-dealer, specialising in New Holland tractors and parts. With over 40 years' experience, we provide top quality sales, service and support. Visit W.R. Shaw in Tullamore and Carlow or online at wrshaw.ie.
Welcome back to Country Life here on Midlands 103. Now we're moving on to tillage, and we have Siobhan Walsh from County Laois on the line. Siobhan, many thanks for taking my call this evening.
Evening, MJ.
Siobhan, we will chat about the budget in a moment. We went through it last week and we saw there was additional money for the tillage industry. We're going to talk about that in a second. But first, grain prices 2025. I know Centenary brought out their grain prices previously, but Tirlan, I suppose, here in the Midlands, they are more of a purchaser of grain, especially County Laois. They brought out the prices last Thursday, 9th of October, and unfortunately, I suppose tillage farmers would like them to have been increased on what they were. Third successive year of prices making a downward slip.
Yeah, unfortunately, MJ. And look, while Irish grain is really good quality and low carbon, we're working in a world market, and prices all over the world, farmers all over the world are in similar positions to us. We're basically producing below the cost of production or just on the cost of production, depending on the crop. So I think the reaction from farmers has been, look, firstly, extremely disappointed. And they're extremely worried as well that are they going to be able to pay their bills. But also looking at the markets, they're probably thinking these prices are probably the best that we're going to get, or very near it. So we have figures there on the Farmers Journal this week. We have all the prices, and then we've worked out what farmers are going to make at those prices. And unfortunately, spring feed barley, our biggest crop in Ireland, we grow about 115,000 hectares of it, at all the prices that we received. So from the co-ops and the merchants, spring barley is losing money, with the exception, of that 198. So Centenary paying €198 per tonne for feed barley, and farmers will make €3.50 at that price on spring feed barley. That's based on Teagasc costs and returns. That doesn't include fixed costs, and it doesn't include land rental, MJ. So that paints a fairly bleak picture.
Well, that is pretty bleak, Siobhan. There's no question about that. I suppose on that then, Siobhan, you do wonder, last week's budget, I know Minister Hayden was put under a lot of pressure by the tillage industry to step up to the mark. There was additional money brought in, but look, is it going to make any difference?
Look, it's money, MJ, and people need money at the minute. I will say, well, look, while spring barley is very bad, there are crops there that are breaking even, are doing a little bit better. But that 30 million, 60 million was asked for, 65 million was asked for. But Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael had promised 60 million per year for 5 years for the tillage sector in their manifestos this time last year during the election, and they didn't deliver that promise. The Irish Grain Growers Group had actually asked for a payment of €350 per hectare, which is significantly more than that 65 million. But they delivered half of what they promised and what was asked for. And in fairness, they weren't asking for that money for no reason. Tillage farmers don't want to get a payment; they want to get paid for their product. And look, I suppose they got 30 million last year in emergency funding when things weren't as bad as they are now. So that 60 million was needed for a reason.
The 30 million additional, Siobhan, we've no idea how that's going to be paid, do we, or what sort of a scheme, or is it just going to be given as maybe €100 per hectare or whatever, maybe as much as it is divided up among the hectares? Is there any idea on that?
So last year, that's the way it was done, the 100 a hectare. I don't think that's going to be the way it's done this year. There's talks of a cap on the amount of acres that you have, and maybe a higher payment for a lower number of acres, but all still to be decided, MJ. I would hope that it will be targeted at tillage farmers, because we've seen tillage area go down this year, but it probably doesn't capture how much it's gone down on actual tillage farms. You know, we have a lot of people looking for land for derogation. They're being forced to look for land to keep their cow numbers. And those farmers are growing maize or spring barley or mixed crops on their farm. So I would really like to see the money targeted towards tillage farmers that really, really need it at this moment in time.
Yeah, when we talk about, Siobhan, the land that's being lost out of tillage farming, and then, you know, dairy farmers needing more land for derogation and for stocking rates and whatnot, I suppose on the ground is that as real an issue as it is? If land is being let for tillage for a number of years, you know, is it fenced for stock? Is there water troughs on it? Is it available to go directly across to dairy farmers? Or maybe are you looking then at dairy farmers just keeping a little bit of tillage themselves just to increase their land base for nitrates or whatnot? What's the mechanics, I suppose, of that on the ground?
Yeah, it's becoming a lot more common that dairy farmers are now growing their own crop, and whether that be maize or, you know, they'll grow maize for silage maybe, or they'll grow spring barley or winter barley to have straw for themselves. So they're doing something that's going to suit their dairy enterprise. And look, that's good, that's sustainable farming, but it's not sustainable in the way it's being done, I suppose, that people are you know, we're seeing the derogation push people to rent land, because unfortunately, I'm hearing every week of blocks of land being lost out of tillage. So whatever it is about this year, there seems to be a lot of blocks of land coming out of leases. Maybe they were in a long-term lease, and those leases are now coming up, whether they were 25-year or 7-year. And, you know, in the last month alone, I've heard of 2 blocks of around 200 acres that have been lost from tillage farmers. And tillage farmers, at those prices that I just talked about earlier on, they can't simply compete for rented land. And unfortunately then, that has a knock-on impact on their business. They don't have the same scale that they had, you know, and they have machinery for that scale. And it's harder maybe there's someone working with them on the farm at different times of the year. It's harder to employ those people. So there's loads of knock-on impacts on people. But I suppose scale is the big thing. If you have a specialist tillage farmer and they're losing a big chunk of rented land, it makes their business harder.
Yeah, absolutely. Last one, Siobhan, and that is oats and the inability of tillage farmers to be able to sell their oats this year. Can you shed a bit of light on that for us, please, or what's occurring?
Yeah, isn't it amazing? We're importing about 6 million tonnes of grain into the country for animal feed and malting and things like that. And we have sheds of oats in the country, MJ. And simply people don't want to buy them. And look, oats area has increased slightly over the last number of years. It'll probably go down this year. But also people have done consistently well on yields. We had a number of premium oat markets. You know, Flavins take oats for porridge, both organic and conventional. Tirlon take quite a number of oats. They won't take as much next year. But people mills don't seem to want to buy it for feed. And really, you know, while the government didn't come with a package in the budget that people wanted money-wise, the government should be trying to find some way that these oats that are being produced in Ireland, and a lot of them, the straw chopped and they're carbon neutral oats. I mean, it's such a shame that they're not going into our feed chain. And I know merchants now who have sheds thousands of tonnes of oats, and they're looking for a boat to export those oats out of the country. So that just doesn't make sense to me.
Doesn't make sense to anyone with a head on their shoulders. Siobhan, I suppose, I remember years ago we used to have sheep on the farm, and my father was a West of Ireland man, and rolled oats was the feed for the ewes before lambing. I suppose the knock-on of that then is there are less ewes in the country, less sheep farmers, especially here in the Midlands as well, and I suppose that's part of it as well. You know, they're not there. Years ago I don't think we would have had that problem, but when you are saying it like that, here it is stored and here it is that we're looking to export it out of the country, you'd have to scratch your head sometimes, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and when we see, you know, in a grass shortage, we see people recommending that people use palm kernel for the cows. And I understand cows won't gorge on the palm kernel and things like that, but oats would be an ideal candidate to substitute the palm kernel with. The palm kernels shouldn't be substituting the oats anyway. So there are slots where it could fit in, and I think the livestock sector and the mills need to just open their eyes a little bit and see that this is happening, and eventually, you know, they won't have a tillage sector there to buy their straw from, or to have a local source of grain. Because we saw in 2018 we had a drought, and the imported feed was needed that year. We had stocks of Irish grain in the country. If we didn't have those stocks of Irish grain in the country, we were waiting 4 to 6 weeks on feed to come in.
Yeah. Will you be hoping there is a bit more joined up thinking on it? Siobhan, I've got to say many thanks for joining me here this evening. Give us an excellent rundown there of the sector, and we'll speak to you again on the programme.
Thanks, MJ.
Siobhan Walsh there, tillage editor of the Irish Farmers Journal from County Laois, giving us a great rundown there. A lady who really knows her stuff upside down and inside out, I should say. And I just put into Copilot here the AI tool from Microsoft. I use it quite a bit now, actually, I have to say, about barley prices over the course of the last 3 years, and it's down each year. And when you hear a figure like that of €3.50 per tonne of a margin for tillage farmers, €3.50 that is now per tonne of a margin, and that's at 198 a tonne, €198 a tonne. You know, you don't have to know much about business to understand that there's no longevity in that, and tillage it's in trouble. There's no point saying any different. And to all the tillage farmers out there, I know how hard you work and what a challenging industry it is, and how weather dependent it is, and long hours and whatnot. And you need to be rewarded for your work, as Kieran McAvoy from County Laois said to me, the tillage chair of the IFA, a couple of weeks back, that it's a perfect storm really as a result of input costs and then grain grain prices, I should say, going one way and costs going the other way. And it's a very, very challenging time for tillage farmers. There's no doubt about that. Now, after the break, we're going to be speaking on weather to a lady from Met Éireann, Dr. Rona McGovern. And if you are a weather enthusiast, so if you're big into the weather, like most farmers are, there's a project coming up which might be of interest to you, dating back through Irish weather over the course of the last 160, 170 years. So we're going to find out all about that in just a moment. Stay tuned.
The French know luxury. Discover the all-new 252 DS Automobiles range at Hugo Luna Motors. Experience pure driving pleasure with DS Automobiles, the French luxury car company. DS's premium range stands out through its charismatic style, interior refinement, sophisticated technology and first-class comfort. Book your test drive today and discover the magic of DS Automobiles at hugolunamotors.ie.
Country Life on Midlands 103.
Brought to you by W.R. Shaw, where New Holland isn't just a brand, it's our passion. For over 40 years, we've been Ireland's trusted name for New Holland tractors, parts and farm machinery. Whether you need new, used or ex-hire tractors, we've got you covered. wrshaw.ie.
And you're very welcome back to Country Life here on Midlands 103. Now we're moving on to the weather. Often talk about the weather here in the programme, but this is a little bit different. It's not about the current weather, it's about the weather in times gone by. And I have a lady from Met Éireann who's very knowledgeable in relation to this. It's Dr. Rhonda McGovern. Rhonda, many thanks for taking my call this evening.
Thanks for having me on, MJ.
You're more than welcome. This is a really interesting one. Popped across the email here earlier in the week, and I said some of my listeners here in the Midlands would have great interest in this because farmers and the weather are inherently linked together, Rhonda, as you well know. And this is about, I suppose, going back in time. Tell us a bit about this. It's called the Irish Rescue Weather Project. What is it exactly?
Yeah, the Irish Weather Rescue Project, it's a Met Éireann initiative seeking the public's help in digitising historic rainfall data from the National Climate Archive, which we have in Met Éireann. And the National Climate Archive just refers to lots of meteorological records, so observations of the weather through history, recorded by volunteers over the years. So these records are in paper format, and therefore you could nearly consider them hidden. Like, we have them, they're there, they exist, but they're not very accessible. So in order for them to become more accessible to people, they need to be in digital format. And that's what we're asking members of the public to help us out with.
So the mechanics of this, I'm presuming that these details are written in big, large, leather-bound ledgers that are huge and they're on desks or whatever. So are people going to have to go and collect these and then bring them home and then put the data into your system, or how's it going to work?
No, this can be done by anyone who has access to a computer, and that can be a library computer. It doesn't even have to be your own. Basically, we have images of these rainfall records. The series that's up online with this project at the moment is daily rainfall data, so the rainfall registers. So people go onto the site, which is irishweatherrescue.ie, and they can digitise in two different ways. And when I say the word digitise, I literally mean they're looking at the images and they're taking the information and typing it in to the corresponding boxes that are there on the site already. So it's a case of just going along, and they can decide to digitise daily rainfall data, so where they'll be asked for 1 month's worth of data, and they'll know what month they're digitising because it'll say it on the top left of the sheet. So they put in whatever is available for each day of the month and then the total. And then there's also metadata. Now, at the moment, our metadata sheets aren't live. We just are currently having a little bit of an issue with inflow, I suppose, of people and keeping up with it. So they'll be back online hopefully tomorrow or the next day. And people there will be able to get the station name, the unit of measurement. So was the rainfall measured in millimetres or in inches, or was it stated even on the sheet? Sometimes it's not stated. And the observer's name. So they're the two types of ways that people can do it. It takes around about a minute to digitise a metadata sheet and about 3 minutes to digitise a data sheet. So it's all very quick. There's no obligation. People might come along and do one sheet and think, oh, that's me, it's not for me. People might come along and go, I love it, and keep going. Obviously, we'd love if people loved it, but, there's no kind of obligation.
Yeah, and you're going back 160 years. So I'm looking here back to about 1865. So you're gonna be able to see then the people who are going to be doing this, the people who are enthusiastic about this and want to I suppose go back in time and become little scientists for the period of time of doing it, are going to be able to see how much rain fell in a given area back in the 1870s, 1880s on a given day. Is this throughout the course of the year in these the information like the stations, or is it for a month, or what's the data like in front of you? Like, what are you actually reading?
So what you'll see in front of you, the sheet will show you a full year, but you'll only be asked to digitise 1 month at a time. Now, because we have 3.5 million daily rainfall observations, they're not up online at once. So currently we have data from the 1940s and 1930s, which does include an odd sheet or two from 1950 and 1951. And once they're done, then we'll move back in batches of 10. So that, we'll take the next decade, the 1920s will be up then. And I suppose one thing that might be of interest to your listeners, like Laois goes back to 1866, Offaly back also to 1866, and Westmeath back to 1871. Excuse me. And there are a total of 42 unique stations in those three counties over the years, and 664 years of data for those three counties. So there's plenty for your listeners to get involved with if they're interested. But you don't even have to choose, the county you live in. You can choose a different county if you want either. There's plenty of choice there for people.
And in relation then to extreme rainfall or rainfall events over the last 160 years, say if we're looking at Laois, Offaly and Westmeath, have we seen times in the last 160 odd years where there has been huge amount of rainfall over periods of time? Are we currently in a position that we get similar weather to the years ago? I suppose this is the info we're going to get out of this, but it's really interesting. That's
exactly it, MJ. That's the information we're hoping to get. Now, we have had other data rescue projects over the years, and a colleague of mine, Dr. Ciara Ryan, found that a flooding event in 1905 in Bray as a result of rescuing this sort of data. So, yeah, we would like to think that we'll get similar from other counties around Ireland. But time will tell, and it will be, even if it's not that we get extreme events, it would be to show us how, or if at all, things have changed from back then to now. Have our rainfall patterns remained the same, or has there been an increase or a decrease, and has that been seasonal, and so on and so forth. It'll give us loads of information.
Yeah, and if you were listening to the programme earlier, Rhonda, if you stay listening after, you'll hear how much we talk about weather here on the programme. We're talking about, tillage farmers just a few minutes ago, and there's winter crops being sown at the moment. We're going to be talking about potato harvesting in about 3 or 4 minutes' time, and it's the best potato harvest season in living memory for some potato farmers.
Brilliant.
Yeah, as a result of the dry October. So weather and agriculture is just, it's so intricate and important and vests off one another that something like this really could have a little bit of interest for farmers in maybe even older farmers who might have a bit more time on their hands and who really want to delve back into it and see what the weather was like in times gone by. People are interested around that. How do they? What's the website? And they just log on. What do they do? Give us the website name.
So they can go to irishweatherrescue.ie. But if they want a bit more information first, they can contact me at irishweatherrescue@met.ie.
Very good. Okay, so the website is irishweatherrescue.ie and your irishweatherrescue@met.ie. Rhonda, we're going to say many thanks for joining me here on the programme. Really interesting one. And when you have all the data put together, will you come back and tell us a little bit more on what you found out, especially about the counties here, Laois, Offaly and Westmeath?
I'd love to, MJ. That'd be great. And I'd like to say to your listeners, happy International Rural Women's Day. I didn't realise it was today. I just found out earlier on. So I hope all the rural women are having a great day.
Well, that makes two of us, Rhonda. I'm after learning it as well. So many happy returns is what we'll say.
Great.
Many thanks, Rhonda. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Rhonda McGovern there, Met Éireann, and that is irishweatherrescue.ie. And it won't be really interesting to see all of those facts and figures when they're put in over the course of the last 160 odd years. And it goes to show you how much data there is on certain things. But wouldn't you love to see how much rain fell in certain parts of the Midlands back in the day, and then see if it's currently falling to the same level? And as they say, I'm sure it is. The Romans used to call Ireland Hibernia, land of 1,000 weathers. That wasn't today or yesterday. So I think we've had very differing weather patterns for a long time here in Ireland, and well used to it we were, and we still are. Now, coming up after the break, we're going to talk to Sean Ryan. Sean is the potato chair of the IFA, and we're talking about the current potato harvest, which is the best in memory for potato farmers, for some potato farmers. I suppose it depends what age you are, but a really good month of October, and we're going to talk to Sean in just a moment. Stay tuned.
Country Life on Midlands 103
With W.R. Shaw. Looking for the best in farm machinery? We've been supplying top quality New Holland tractors and parts and providing service since 1982. Our expert team is here to keep your farm running smoothly, with branches in Tullamore and Carlow. Visit wrshaw.ie today.
And you're very welcome back to Country Life here on Midlands 103. Now we're ending the programme this evening on the topic of potatoes, and we have Sean Ryan, potato chair from the IFA, on the line. Sean, many thanks for taking my call this evening. Sean, the potato harvest, it's in full swing. We're going to chat about prices in a moment, but from a weather perspective, you must be absolutely delighted the way the month is going.
Yeah, sure. It has been an exceptional year, really, as regards of harvesting. It was an early spring. Crops went in early, and it's been a great summer all along. And now it is a great harvest. I'd say we're probably 70 to 80% there already, so which is very early to be at that stage.
Was it 2022? I tried to remember earlier in the programme, Sean. Was it 2022 when fields were waterlogged up and down the country, and the harvest was extremely challenging? Some difference in a short space of time?
Yeah, sure. It's the opposite as well, the complete opposite. There were just machines weren't able to travel, and fields were waterlogged. And this year now, you can see today now, there's dust there and machines going up and down the field, which is very unusual to harvest in potatoes. It's great to get a year like that.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely fantastic, and more than entitled to it. Everyone deserves a little bit of luck in it. Comes to the harvesting side of things, that's fine. I suppose, look, you get the potatoes out and you get them on the ground, and then the hard part comes along, and that's when it comes to bringing the money in for them. If we're looking at potato prices this year, Sean, where are we at, I suppose, at the moment in relation to prices?
So the prices, there's a big variation in prices. Like you have different grades and all that, and the real good packing quality potatoes make the better money, and then the lesser quality goes into the 7.5s or whatever, and for peeling. So there's a big variation in prices. Really, you couldn't really say. It all depends on the quality of the product itself.
And year on year, Sean, say for the higher quality spud that's being harvested at the moment versus last year, versus the year before, are we same? Are we down a little bit? I see tillage farmers, your colleagues in the tillage farming industry are well down on grain prices in the last few years. What about yourselves?
There would be kind of more or less the same as last year. The previous year there was a scarcity of potatoes because of the wet year and the wet harvest, and they were more expensive that year. So they're probably on par there with last year.
And for the uninitiated, myself included, Sean, when it comes to potato farming, are potato farmers then selling predominantly direct to supermarkets, or are you selling through an agent or a middle person who gives you the price and then they sell on? What's the business model in general?
The majority of them going to packers now. There's 5 or 6 main packers in the country, and supplying the big multiples, and most of the potatoes they have their own growers, and growers bring them into their pack houses in boxes, and they do the washing and distribution of them. So, and then there is some people going into supermarkets and shops direct themselves, they're bagging themselves. So there's a bit of both in that.
And when we go into supermarkets nowadays, Sean, we see, nothing but roosters from a certain time of the year on. It's as if they've taken over the Irish potato industry. Presumably that's because they're easy to grow, resilient crop, and they do well. I'm guessing that's the reason, is it? The consumer likes them as well. They're easy cook, and they're easy peel as well. There's no real eyes or anything, and they're a good size for peeling. And the rooster has lost a little bit of market share in the last few years. The whites seem to be after taking a little bit more of the market share there. Say Maris Pipers and those seem to be taking a little bit there now as well. There's more and more lads growing chipping potatoes and salad potatoes as well. So some of them used to be brought in, say from the UK or whatever. But the growers have invested a lot of money. Some growers have invested a lot of money in growing them for the market there now. And when farmers are listening to the programme this evening, Sean, who don't have any understanding or affiliation with potato farmers, they might be saying to themselves, wow, 70-80% true harvest could be done in the next 10 days. That's going to be a soft winter for potato farmers. However, that wouldn't be the wisest thing to say, because for some potato growers, the real work only starts now when they're out of the ground.
Yeah, well, it all depends. Some growers put them straight into packers, and they don't store them themselves. The packer does the storing, and then more people have their own cold rooms, and then there's a good few growers then that would be washing and bagging, and that there's a lot of work in that. Even though the thing is very mechanised now, there's still a lot of labour, and you have delivering into shops, and it's not like a grain harvest that you just deliver it in and you're finished. There is a lot of work with them. Even when they are harvested and in boxes, you have to keep them down at 3 degrees in the cold rooms, and there's still a lot of work, and you have them until you nearly have a full year of supply to the market as well. So you kind of have to keep the cold rooms running next summer as well until the new season come in. And so there is a lot of work in there.
Yeah, and as you say, work, I suppose labour then is what springs to mind, and we hear about how challenging it is to get labour in all walks of agriculture and in all walks of life really at the moment. Labour is a big issue for every industry, but for the likes of yourselves then, labour, presumably seasonal labour is what you were relying on in times gone by, Sean, but harder and harder to get. How is labour on the ground for potato farmers at the moment? I'm presuming very challenging.
Sure, it is. Yeah, some of the bigger growers would have enough work for full-time jobs at potatoes, but I suppose that the growers are investing heavily in machinery to try and combat the labour shortage, and that has its own challenges as well, because the price of machinery has just gone crazy in the last like cars, like anything in any walk of life, machinery and parts and all that has really added to the cost of production.
We talk about generational renewal then, Sean. It's a big topic in agriculture in general, and mainstream agriculture, especially in the last few months. A big report came out there on the ploughing as to how to get younger people involved in farming, from potato farming, potato harvesting, and people involved in your industry. What's the age demographic like? Are there many young people getting involved in this area, Sean?
Yeah, there would be a certain amount that would be growers' sons taking the business on, and that if the business is there and built up, but it'd be very hard for a young person to start into potatoes now, because the cost of machinery and land and the cost of growing them, and then trying to get a market to sell them in, that would be a big challenge for a young person to start off. But there are some people, there is young people coming into the job.
Yeah, which is great to hear.
Yeah.
Sean, we want to say, well, look, the weather's outside all our control, but it's great you're getting it, and it's great you're getting your job done. And there's going to be spuds on the table throughout Laois, Shoffley, Westmeath, throughout the whole country for the rest of the year, every day in lots of houses. And it's down to yourselves that we have them. So it's great work you're doing. You're providing a cheap, good food source for people that's healthy, and we want to thank you for all the hard work you do, and I wish you well with the best of the harvest. We speak to you again on the programme.
Yes, thanks very much.
Sean Ryan there, potato chair from the IFA, and great to see the potato harvest coming in at such a good time with such great weather, and they're nearly done, as you said, so far ahead that they normally would be, and what an October we're having. As I say, it's the year that keeps on giving in certain areas. I have to caveat that, because there are farmers in other parts of the country that didn't get as good a time as we've got here in the Midlands in relation to rainfall and whatnot. We have been exceptionally lucky since the start of the growing season. And that is it for this evening's programme. I want to thank all my guests here over the course of the last hour. David Argue from Teagasc, speaking about the different types of finishing systems and what will be needed next year. Siobhan Walsh from the Irish Farmers Journal, speaking about the tillage industry. We had Rhonda McGovern talking about the Irish Weather Rescue Project. And if you're interested in that, it's irishweatherrescue.ie. Log on to it and you'll see all the details on it. And finally, there's Sean Ryan, potato chair from the IFA, speaking to us about their current harvest, which is going from strength to strength. We're nearly finished, as we said. That is it for this evening's programme. I'll be back next Wednesday evening at 7 p.m. The show is repeated on Sunday morning at 7 a.m. You can get us wherever you get your podcasts. You type in MJ space Clery, Clery. We will pop up and you can listen at your leisure. We'll talk to you in a week's time. Joe Cooney is up next with Country Roads. And as I said, we'll see you in 7 days' time. Good night.